Narrated by Alex Vincent and Oliver Maines.
Just how important is your network? Ask Vernon Jordan. In 1960s Georgia, Jordan secured an internship only to have the offer rescinded when his employers realized he was Black. In need of work, he went on to take a job as a driver to Robert Maddox, Atlanta's former mayor. Jordan has an enviable ability to form connections and to parlay those connections into new ones. His connection with Maddox propelled him to success as an executive and civil rights leader. And his network now includes Barack Obama and Morgan Freeman. He sits on 9 executive boards and was once described as the quickest path between any 2 Fortune 500 companies. In short, Jordan understands how to network and how networks work. Learn to do the same, and your connections might take you all the places you've dreamed of going.
Blink 1 of 8.
You, like most people, probably hate networking. The word might conjure corporate networking events where participants look over their conversation partner's shoulders in search of someone more important to talk to. Or conferences where you come away with a stack of business cards and only a faint recollection of the people who own the cards. But think for a minute about the role relationships play in your life. A network of relationships can bring comfort, joy, intimacy, new perspectives, new experiences, and so much more. When you really think about it, it's surprising we don't pour more time into our networks.
The key message is, networking isn't a chore if you know how to do it well.
Slick corporate networking misses the point. It's founded on the misplaced belief that simply knowing more people brings benefits. More social status, job offers, financial gain, and insider intelligence. But authentic networking isn't about treating people as assets and relationships as commodities. It's about finding common ground, facilitating new relationships, and maintaining old ones. A good networker focuses not only on what she can give people, but also on what she can get from them. So, how can you become a good networker? First, learn your networking style. You probably conform to one of 3 main types: expansionist, broker, or convener. An expansionist is a hit at every conference and cocktail hour. Why? This networker is at ease with approaching strangers and exceptionally talented at forging spontaneous ties. If you're an expansionist, you probably have an address book full of contacts. But while you know all your connections are less likely to know each other. A broker tends to have a diverse network of people with different interests and expertise. Brokers are natural at bringing these varied people together by, for example, introducing their archaeologist friend to that cybersecurity expert they know. The connections the broker facilitates often result in innovation and collaboration. If you're a broker, most of your contacts are, like you, creative and open-minded. A convener's network is closely interconnected. Not only are all the convener's key contacts valued and intimate friends, but the convener has worked at fostering deeper relationships between those contacts. As a result, the convener's friends are very likely to know and move in the same circles as each other. If you're a convener, you're probably trusted and valued within your network thanks to the quality of the relationships you've forged there. No one style of networking is better than the other, but learning which style is yours can help you become a better networker.
Blink 2 of 8.
Which is more important, the quality or quantity of your connections? Quality is obviously important. Your closest relationships are where you enjoy trust and intimacy, where you turn for support and advice. But as the anthropologist Robin Dunbar has found, the average person only has the time and cognitive energy to maintain highly intimate relationships with 2 to 5 people. The maximum number of stable relationships we can maintain hovers at 150.
The key message is, the ideal network blends quality and quantity.
Network researchers refer to those quality connections as strong ties, those 150 people that make up your casual friendship group. Out of that 150, you'd probably only call a few in an emergency. But if you bumped into any one of them, you wouldn't think twice about grabbing a coffee. Want to grow a network of over 150? Well, that's where quantity comes in. Just as important as strong ties are the weak ties that lie outside your friendship group. The people you went to school with, colleagues you've fallen out of touch with, the guy behind the counter at the corner store. Strong ties consistently deliver benefits, but those benefits come with a deeper sense of obligation. A strong tie can help you move house, but when it's his turn to move, you better take the morning off and get ready to schlep boxes. Weak ties can deliver benefits, but those benefits are unpredictable. A barista and aspiring screenwriter might find out that one of the regulars she chats with at work is a big-shot producer willing to help her out, but might is the operative word here. The truth is, we all allocate our resources between strong and weak ties differently. How we allocate them can depend on our networking type. Expansionists cultivate weak ties. They find new connections easy to form, but don't feel obliged to maintain those connections. Brokers enjoy connections with a small group of strong ties, but also spend time maintaining and leveraging their weak ties across a variety of social contexts. Without maintenance, those weak ties often dissolve. Conveners prefer to operate in only a few social contexts, and they pour most of their energy into maintaining and deepening their strong ties. Basically, your network is made up of close connections and weaker connections. Your networking type influences your ratio of strong to weak connections. It also influences the way those connections are configured. In the next 3 blinks, we'll take a deeper dive into each of the 3 types.
Blink 3 of 8.
Which of these A-list celebrities is most likely to be a convener? George Clooney, Viola Davis, Emma Stone, or Brad Pitt? It's a trick question. They all are. When a joint study between the University of Southern California and Ben-Gurion University sought to find out what set A-listers apart from their B and C-list counterparts, it found the A-listers' networks were configured around interconnected strong ties. In other words, A-listers are typically conveners.
The key message is, conveners create networks based on trust, intimacy, and exclusivity.
Conveners don't just facilitate connections, they facilitate connections between their connections. And all these connections enjoy a high level of trust with each other. 3 factors contribute to this trust. First, the interconnected and exclusive nature of these networks mean that if you're in, you must be trustworthy to some degree. The vast majority of the convener's connections are strong ties. The convener keeps his friends close and doesn't have much time for outsiders. Second, this trust enables vulnerability. Connections within the convener's network feel comfortable sharing intimate secrets and weaknesses with each other. Moments of authentic vulnerability are often the catalyst that pushes a warm friendship into a stronger, deeper bond. These displays of vulnerability, in turn, enable a higher degree of trust. Third, the convener's network is grounded in network closure. In other words, there are checks and balances determining who's allowed in and who stays in. If a connection doesn't conform to the wider network's shared values, she can be pushed to the periphery or even evicted from the network altogether. Network closure creates an environment where trust can flourish. If an individual can't be trusted, she's simply not central to the network. Thanks to the exclusive, closely knit structure of their networks, conveners can enjoy significant social advantages. Chief among them? Bandwidth. In a network composed mostly of strong ties, connections are more willing to offer a high level of mental or emotional bandwidth. They invest time and effort in helping each other. In a professional setting, for example, a convener might access complex insider information through his network simply because others in his network are willing to take the time to share it with him. There are also disadvantages to this network structure. Conveners' networks can be cliquish and nepotistic. And thanks to their strict barriers to entry and the behavioral codes enforced in-network, they tend to be homogenous. Still, there's no denying, if you're a convener, your trusted network will prove socially advantageous.
Blink 4 of 8.
Ferran Adrià is regarded by foodies as one of the world's greatest living chefs. During his tenure at restaurant El Bulli, he played with form and texture to create stunning new dishes. But while Adrià has the reputation of a lone genius, the chef is quick to credit his team and his network for his success. El Bulli's kitchen was based around collaboration, and Adrià looked to friends in fields as diverse as physics and architecture for inspiration. Adrià is a classic broker. Conveners' networks occur naturally among people who share an interest or identity, like university alumni or tech workers. Brokers pull off something more challenging. They create connections across groups of people in configurations where different perspectives and expertise are exchanged.
The key message is, brokers bring diverse connections together.
A Harvard study of over 2.5 million research papers found that those presenting new, innovative ideas were more likely to be authored by diverse teams. Brokers facilitate these diverse collaborations. And thanks to their networks, which see them straddle a convergence of ideas and information, are often themselves creative forces to be reckoned with. Brokers do great things. But what makes someone a great broker? For starters, brokers are high self-monitors. In psychology, self-monitoring refers to how carefully you control the image you project to others. High self-monitors change the self-image they project depending on the context they're in. In other words, they're social chameleons, a trait that allows them to cultivate connections across a broad range of contexts. They're also quick to pick up on social cues and to code switch, adjusting their language and mannerisms to those of the groups they're in. Take note, though, successful brokers are naturally high self-monitors. Someone who forces themselves to project a certain range to fit in with a new group can often come across as fake. Brokers aren't just gifted at blending in with a range of people. They're adept at getting a range of people to listen to them. A field experiment analyzed how U.S. senators communicated with their constituents. It found that if senators answered letters with a response tailored to the constituents' position on an issue, their constituents viewed them more favorably. That's what brokers do. They tailor their message to their audiences spontaneously and in real time. The broker's gifts can also be their undoing. There's a fine line between blending in, sensitively adjusting your message to its context, and being perceived as inauthentic and self-interested. Brokers risk being perceived as people who'll say anything to be liked or get what they want. But when they apply their gifts with finesse, brokers can bring people together, resolve tricky conflicts, and inspire trust and enthusiasm across their exceptionally diverse networks.
Blink 5 of 8.
Most people can count an average of 600 people in their networks. But for expansionists, that number's much higher. Expansionists are much more likely to fall into the class that network scientists dub superconnectors. people with a network of 6,000 or more. For many people, that sounds like a staggering number of connections, even in this era of social media. But 6,000 isn't even the upper limit. Former U.S. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt had over 22,500 names in his address book. Pretty impressive considering FDR died more than 60 years before Facebook was invented.
The key message is, expansionists have impressively broad networks.
Expansionists are popular, and popularity breeds a social advantage that accrues all kinds of other advantages. For example, research shows that even 4 decades after leaving high school, people who were popular in their teens earn more on average than those who were less popular. A recent meta-study that analyzed the findings of 130 prior studies found that employees with large networks are better performing and enjoy more perks at work. What's more, being popular is all but guaranteed to ensure expansionists continue to grow in popularity. The Barabashi-Albert model, devised by scientists Albert Laszlo Barabashi and Rika Albert, demonstrates that if one person in a network has double the connections of her counterpart, she's also twice as likely to attract new connections. Why? Preferential attachment. If we perceive someone or something is liked, we're predisposed to like it ourselves. Expansionists maintain their popularity because they're exceptionally good at forging one-on-one connections, often in a short space of time. They're gifted at reading and responding to nonverbal cues, and, while not necessarily extroverted, they're competent and energetic communicators. They also tend to engage in pro-social or altruistic behavior, donating money and time to people and causes they believe in. But unlike conveners, their broad networks mean they often don't have the capacity to deeply invest in those causes. Expansionists, while well-meaning, simply don't have the cognitive bandwidth to support all of their connections in a meaningful way. The very size of their networks means expansionists are likely to have proportionally more weak ties and proportionally fewer strong ties. And this can have drawbacks. When surveyed, people with streamlined networks reported enjoying close relationships with 6% of their non-family connections. Ironically, expansionists with much larger networks only reported enjoying close relationships with 3% of their non-family connections. Expansionists' wide-ranging networks can prohibit them from enjoying the emotional and practical advantages that a close group of strong ties offers.
Blink 6 of 8.
Whether you're a convener, broker, or expansionist, your networking style should come naturally to you. But that style isn't set in stone. There's nothing to stop a convener from brokering a connection between two acquaintances from different backgrounds, or an expansionist from cultivating strong ties. In fact, if you want to level up your networking game, you need to hybridize your networking, adopting the best tactics from other networking styles.
The key message is, borrow from other networking styles and network to your advantage.
How exactly can you adapt your networking style to get the most out of your connections? To begin with, remember that different networking styles are better suited to different life stages. Expansionist networks boasting lots of weak ties are more likely to generate the random connections that can result in a job offer. So, if you're a recent college grad, think about broadening your network. Meanwhile, most people are best positioned to act as brokers in the middle of their careers. They have enough status to have amassed a number of skilled, powerful connections, but not so much status that they've become risk-averse. If you're a mid-tier, mid-career employee, try your hand at brokering connections between different professional bubbles. Brokers and conveners can both consider oscillating, or switching between time spent cultivating strong ties and time spent brokering new connections. This tactic allows conveners to grow their networks beyond a dense clique of close ties and spark the diverse connections that can lead to creative innovation. It also allows brokers to build trust and intimacy among select connections, lending credibility to their brokering. Don't neglect dormant ties. As we move through life stages, we inevitably lose touch with people we were once close with. And many of us feel embarrassed about rekindling these relationships. But dormant ties can still be valuable. If you've gone down different life paths, you'll probably glean fresh perspectives from spending time with them. Even better, the bond you had before won't disappear. You two might not be as close as before, but you'll still enjoy some degree of trust. There are no hard and fast rules for networking. Adopting tactics from other networking styles, shifting between styles, and resurrecting old ties are all effective ways to enhance your natural networking tendencies.
Blink 7 of 8.
Conventional advice about networking tends to focus on your connections, plural. But what about each individual connection? After all, without them, you'd have no network. Just as it's critical to manage and leverage your connections, it's also important to effectively form, maintain, and grow the one-on-one relationships that make up your network. Creating connections can be daunting, but it's not impossible.
The key message is, creating connections is a skill that can be learned.
Want to spark more connections? Here are some tips. In sustained interactions, give the other person your full attention. And yes, that means putting away your cell phone. When you're distracted, your ability to focus on and respond to others is impaired. Cell phones don't just impair your focus, they actually cause what researchers call inattentional blindness. When you're using or even thinking about your cell phone, your attention is fragmented. So fragmented, in fact, that in a study where participants were asked to look at their cell phones, only 25% noticed a clown on a unicycle riding past as they did so. Eye contact with another person, on the other hand, signals that you're giving them your full attention. People that initiate and maintain eye contact are frequently perceived as more likable, more trustworthy, and even better looking than those who don't. The trick is not to maintain that eye contact too long. Hold someone's gaze for roughly 3 seconds at a time. Any more and you risk coming across as too intense. Finally, don't underestimate the power of questions. People like talking about themselves. Create an opportunity for them to do so, and they'll like you too. A Harvard study of speed daters found that the ones who asked the most questions were more likely to spark connections with their partners. Just make sure you're asking the right questions. Specifically, follow-up questions. Lots of questions are designed to shift the conversation back to the person who asks them. Try following up a bland opener like, "What do you do?" with a follow-up question like, "What do you enjoy most about your job?" These probing questions signal a genuine interest in learning more about your conversation partner. Breaking the ice with someone new isn't always easy. But simply giving a new acquaintance your attention, through eye contact, questioning, and avoiding the urge to check your phone, can create a warm foundation for a future relationship.
Blink 8 of 8.
Ever heard of the 6 degrees of separation theory? It posits that everyone in the world is, theoretically, only 6 connections away from every other person in the world. And it has its basis in an actual experiment run in 1967 by a researcher called Stanley Milgram. He assigned 300 people in the US a packet. Each packet was designated for the same target, a stockbroker working in Boston. Participants could only pass the packet on to someone they knew on a first-name basis. In the end, the packet only had to be passed on average through 5.2 intermediaries before it reached the stockbroker. Milgram's experiment was titled The Small World Problem. And from its results, it's easy to conclude the world is indeed smaller than you might think. Another key takeaway? Your network is more far-reaching than you might think.
The key message is, your network connects you across the globe.
There are roughly 7.7 billion people in the world. So how do human networks bridge these connections so efficiently? Well, human networks aren't just made up of strong and weak ties, but of ordered and random connections. In math, a regular network is a network that behaves in a consistent and ordered way. For example, each point in the network connects with the 4 points closest to it. At the other end of the spectrum is the random network, where there's no pattern consistency or coherence to how the various points in a network intersect. Human networks combine the principles of both regular and random networks. Some of your connections are predictable. They're based on family, geography, profession. Others are wildcards, that man you were once stuck in an elevator with, or that woman you once sat next to on a plane. Researchers Duncan Watts and Steven Strogatz call this human network the small world network. They show that it's this precise mix of order and randomness that enables your network to reach so widely. In the small world network, densely connected groups are linked to other such groups by wildcard connections. The small world network shows every type of networking mode at play. Conveners gather clusters of connections around them, brokers are the vectors that bring these clusters into conversation with each other, and expansionists can bring together and inspire multiple groups simultaneously. Whatever your networking style, your connections are a powerful resource with the potential to take you further than you ever thought possible.
You've just listened to our Blinks to Social Chemistry by Marissa King.
The key message in these blinks is that networking doesn't have to be a chore. In fact, good networking can be a pleasure. To network well, understand your networking style, cultivate strong relationships and weak ties, and don't be afraid to create new connections. And here's some actionable advice. Don't second-guess your first impression. Even if an interaction with a stranger goes well, you're probably going to analyze it after the fact, angsting over whether you created the right impression. Relax. A Yale study found that when asked to rate a stranger's impression of an initial meeting with them, participants tended to drastically underestimate how much the stranger enjoyed their encounter. Your worries that your interactions fall flat are probably all in your head.
Got feedback? We'd love to hear what you think about our content. Just drop an email to remember@blinkist.com with social chemistry as the subject line and share your thoughts.